And Chief Legal Analyst Khalif Rhodes into this discussion. If you're a pet owner, this story really hurts your heart.
This is definitely one that's not easy to digest. I mean, back-to-back incidents where an animal lost his life at the hands of a gunfire. And so while we talk about gun violence across the country in different capacities, this is just another example of where guns are not used in the right example. But what I can tell you is that it seems like, at least in the Harmon situation, that individual had a defense because there was no charges brought. This situation right here, this woman may have had a defense as well. And so while folks may be outraged and or disturbed by this incident, most of the time it seems like there is a defensible argument. I looked at the case earlier this year in Anderson County where an individual was charged. There was no defense. He really baited the dog to come towards him. Once the dog got towards him, he shot it and killed it right there. Again, in the neighbor dispute, frustration over years built up and took it out on the animal. But if an individual is fearful, that's where this incident changes.
Well, and when you look at past cases, I mean, unless there's video proof of maybe there wasn't really a threat, I mean, it's a he said, she said thing. If you feel uncomfortable, does that basically give you the right? Is there not like a de-escalation tactic you can do first? I'm just saying, like fire in the air, scare the dog off. If that doesn't work, maybe you have to fire at it.
A couple of things. And so you would, I guess the best case scenario is looking at officer training. You know, when you have these incidents with officer-involved violence or an instance with officer-involved shootings, everyone always cries out, well, how come they didn't de-escalate? How come they didn't shoot them somewhere else in the body? How come they didn't attempt to scare them before they shot them? But these are things that you can do Monday morning quarterbacking. Mm-hmm. The law really requires that you are in imminent fear of bodily harm. At that moment, would a reasonable person be fearful of their life? Not 5 minutes after this happened, not 5 days after it happened, would I have been fearful after I look at cameras? But in that moment, when this dog is either approaching me or I felt like, you know what, I had to stand here to protect my children or protect my animals, then yes, the law would say a reasonable person in that moment should have been fearful. Then by all means, you were justified. And that's the term that we have to describe. Is your killing, is your shooting justifiable? Not the fact that it happened, because we know you took an individual or an animal's life in the situation, but was it justified? Do you have a defense to the charge even be brought or for the case to be dismissed? And that's the question that it's always have to be answered, oftentimes right there on the spot.
Yeah, in that heat of the moment, right then and there. For pet owners, what do we take away from this? These two stories that just so happen to happen in the same week.
I'd say camera footage is also helpful. I mean, just like in any of my cases where I'm representing a defendant, a camera footage, if it's that he said, she said argument, if I have a camera footage, we can dispute all of that and say, well, let's see what the video says. Mm-hmm. Regardless of how you try to describe it. I think in the Harmon situation, they mentioned her Ring camera was off. And so you didn't capture the actual moment that it happened. So while she described he just got out the car, shot the animal after he delivered the food, the camera may have told a different picture. And oftentimes as a criminal defense attorney, I want to see what that camera says. There is some grace for a couple of these incidents where you may be able to have a legal remedy outside of the criminal side, but a civil complaint. If I'm Harmon, I'm trying to find any avenue to sue the Instacart or any type of food delivery service driver that may, not just the driver, but the company, because the policies and practices they may have in place may not have been enough to prevent this from happening.